Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon. I have another announcement. Please notify your Attorney General in your state regarding solar panels made by Sonova Generac Systems. If you're having any difficulty with this company, please go to your Attorney General's site in your state and fill out the complaint form. Now, I've got a brand new guest on. I have Jessie Lake. Now, she's been in the Columbia Daily Tribune, and an article was written April 25th, 2020, where it states Columbia mother whose twins are fostered, but what's not in there is they have been adopted in April of 2021 by the head of DSS. And she says she's being treated unfairly. And there's also another article coming up in the works here. And she's a Missouri mom in an unfair battle with the state children's division. And she tried to reunify with her children. I welcome you, Jessie Lake. Thank you for speaking out. Where are you at now with all of this?
Oh, man, what a nightmare it has been. First of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to come on and speak out and kind of share my story. And if nothing else, it's hopefully this will be very therapeutic for me.
Yes.
Um, where am I at? So, yes, this is true. The article was done back in 2020. It was late 2020. And at the time, yes, my twin daughters were being fostered by the acting director of the Department of Social Services here in Missouri, where I live. Um, and a lot of the basis of that news article was it focuses on the conflict of interest that was taking place for the director of the agency to have been able to foster children that are, in a contested parental rights case here, and what made it also kind of unique and wrong in all the sense of the word. She sort of embellished a familial tie to me. There was a very distant relationship, no blood nor marriage, that should have ever deemed her to be any sort of kin or relative, to where she should have gotten placement of my twin daughters. And it was just shortly before their first birthday. So, they weren't even walking
Oh.
when she got them. But, and I will just tell you, just to kind of get a good understanding that the relationship was, I had a brother who's deceased. He passed away in 2010. My brother had a child with the director's sister. So we shared a niece, if you can kind of figure that out. I know it's
Mm-hmm.
complicated, but we shared a niece. There was no, again, blood or marriage relationship. And what landed the girls in care was a positive hair test result on my behalf. And I'm not here to deny that or claim to be someone who is perfect and a saint. And, by no means have I ever hurt my children. Absolutely not. Was I, engaging in illegal, drug activities, and there was no incident or police activity that kind of sparked the whole thing, but it was more or less an ex that made a phone call or a hotline and sent in an allegedly audio tape, all of that nonsense. And it eventually led to them wanting a hair test. I passed the hair test and they wanted my nails. My nails weren't fit. It was just kind of this ongoing harassment until finally I did. They told me to do this hair test and I did not pass it. And the consequences were, it resulted in them removing the children from my care and custody and placing them with, I feel comfortable stating her name like this because it's all in the news, Jennifer Tidball,
Mm-hmm.
and her husband. And, that's where my twins were placed. And I was initially very shocked and surprised. And I didn't feel threatened, at the time when I found out that the girls were going to be placed with her. I
But
just,
was there a
Mhm.
conflict of interest in there?
Yes. Do you know, I honestly didn't even know what her position was at all.
Mm,
I didn't know them well. We had been invited to their home, and it states that in the article. I think if you Googled Missouri mom unfair battle, something like that, or Missouri mom conflict of interest, you can find that article. But it is a very thorough story. I mean, it
hmm.
was very well written and gives a really good kind of summary of, what happened. And I didn't know them well. I knew of them. I knew they had a nice home. Um, I didn't know that they were going to take my babies and never give them back.
Oh,
Not only did I have the two baby girls, but I have a son that at the time he was barely 5. I don't even know if he was 5 yet. And I had an older son who was just preteen age. I mean, he was like 11 or 12, and I always call him my troublemaker.
mm.
Sorry, but he was the handful. But so, needless to say, the whole family was, just split apart, and I had no idea that it would have ever turned to what it did. Initially, when the girls were removed from my care, I know they reached out to my mother, and this is a huge part of it.
Mm.
That my mother, who is had been a nurse for, I mean, my gosh, she started there when I was 3, and I'm 41 now. I mean, she's been a nurse for that long. No criminal record, no nothing. Clean as a whistle. I mean, about the most saint of a woman that you can find. And when those kids initially came into care, she said, she had a trip for Italy scheduled for the next day, and she said, "I'll cancel my trip."
Mhm.
And the director herself told my mother, "No, no, no, don't do that. It's not necessary. Kevin and I will help. It's the right thing to do.
Mm.
This is just temporary." And so my mother went on her trip to Italy. And I think I don't think I know, had she known that we would have never gotten the girls back. Um, I know that she would not have gone on that trip to Italy, but it was
They lied
basically,
to her.
they lied to her. Yeah. Um, it became very clear very early on that they had no intentions of giving those girls back.
Mm.
So initially, when they were placed with them, I immediately went into an inpatient local treatment center where I lived here, and I completed 31 days. Like that's what the judge had asked.
Mm.
Um, and there's bits and pieces that I've kind of left out that are just almost so crazy, and the fact that the judge told me to take my children with me initially to rehab, and
Mm.
that's what happened initially, was that the judge ordered me to take myself and my 2 infants in car seats and my 4-year-old, not the oldest one. The oldest one didn't have to go, but initially she wanted me to take all 3 kids with me to a treatment center and inpatient away from home, and I attempted it. And it was the most horrible, unfit. I can't even describe to you. I am a very tough woman, and I can get along with most everyone. And I can tell you that place was, it was a setup to fail. And I,
Mm.
you know, looking back and knowing what I know now, it absolutely, it was a planned thing. The attorney that was representing me at the time, turns out, was a former coworker of the directors. They um, recommended that I go to this one particular treatment center in Hannibal, Missouri. And I thought, well, at the time, I'm too good to go to the local one. I don't want anyone to see me like slugging across the street with my 2 car seats and my little one, my 5-year-old.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, I'll take my lawyer's advice. Well, from
Mm.
the time I got to that treatment center, it was like, um, it was a setup. They were trying to drive me out of there. I mean, there were allegations of me being neglectful to the kids, that I wanted them all to sleep in the same bed, that I didn't have like proper sheets on the bed the first night. I don't think I bathed the kids the first 2 days we were there. I didn't. I
Mhm.
didn't bathe the kids the first 2 days. I had 3 children, two of them in car seats, not walking, a 5-year-old. We had a flatbed trailer truck when we pulled up to that place to stay for a month with 3 kids. That's a huge, huge deal in a
Mhm.
foreign place. I mean, I didn't think that not bathing the kids for the first 2 days in a foreign place like that was the most, neglectful thing I could have done. I
Mhm.
mean, it just was. And there's other things now that that came to the light that proves that it was all a setup.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
they continuously said that I was they thought I had more of my prescription medication on my person than what I had turned in. I mean, not true, not true. And it stated if I had not left the day that I left, because I ended up leaving that treatment center after about 5 days.
Mhm.
And so that is technically what landed the kids in the care, was that I left the treatment center. So I just had to kind of clarify that there, that um, the judge did give me the opportunity to go to treatment, take the kids, but it said if mother continued to test positive for my prescription medication that they had locked away, but they kept saying, well, she must have some more on her person than what she's
Mhm.
turned in. If she tested positive in the morning, we were going to discharge her. And it just so happened that they pushed me to the limit to where I finally said, fine, come and get me. Like I give. And but it just goes to show, like, you guys were going to put me out anyway. You know what I'm saying? There was nothing I could do because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't been taking anything.
Mhm.
So anyhow, that
Big
happened.
setup.
Huh?
Big setup.
Oh, it was. Yes,
Oh.
yes. And it came around full circle to prove that theory later on down the line. But, um, I could talk about this forever and ever and ever. And so I will try to stay focused and kind of on track here with the story. But after I left that treatment center, the very next day, the caseworker and her supervisor were knocking at the door with an order for pickup to remove the twins and then also my precious little
Oh.
boy. And that's something that I have had to think about, which I hope, I
Mhm.
wish and hope and pray that no other mother ever has to go through, um, have these thoughts. But it's like 4 5 years to bond with a child.
Mhm.
What's worse, having your newborns or your 1 year old taken away, or your 5 year old, and I
Oh.
gotta say, that little boy,
Mhm.
to have 48 hours to prepare him
Oh.
for
How
departure,
long?
to go. His dad got him. I mean, the dad that got the whole thing kind of instigated. He got what he wanted. He got my son. So literally, they just said, you got 48 hours. Pack him up. He's going across the country to a stranger. He didn't know his father. That
Mhm.
was about the. I mean, I don't want to say the hardest thing, but it was extremely painful. I mean, I can't even describe, to have to kneel down on your child's eye level and say,
Mhm.
buddy, you know, it just so painful.
Mhm.
Um, but he's doing wonderful now. He's so smart, and he's 12, and he still lives in Arizona with his father, and that's that. But
Oh.
he's gone from me.
Mhm.
Moving forward, after the girls were removed, I did, like I said, immediately went and got myself checked into an inpatient local treatment center, the one that I thought I was too good for.
Mhm.
Turns out I wasn't too good at all.
Oh.
I that's where I needed to be. And that time around, I was kind of a peer support, and that one that was going, no, don't leave. Don't leave. It's not worth it. Just come. You can do this. You can do this. And I completed it, and they would bring my daughters up there to see me, that month, and
Mhm.
I got to spend a little time with them. And um, when I got discharged from that place, it was a reality check. I went back to my home, and it was just an empty shell, of all my kids' remains. and I was trying to work the program, and it became very clear, like, these people do not want to see me with these girls. They were in immediately, she taught them to call her mommy. They had
Oh my God,
full
that's so.
a full blown nursery in their home
Oh,
right at the gate. Um, took them off the bot. Literally, in the month I was in that rehab center, they had their first steps, said their first words, got off the bottle, off the binky. I mean, it was like everything. And that in itself, just right there, that you were teaching those girls to call you mommy, I think is extremely inappropriate. It says a lot.
mm-hmm.
That woman had no intention of ever giving them back, and she was the boss of the state. I mean, the boss of everyone. Would you have
Mm-hmm.
liked to have been that caseworker that was assigned to that? Oh, and don't. That was another, bullet point that I have to touch on, the caseworkers and the supervisor, the vendetta that went on. Well, this drug out for 4 years.
Oh,
They kept these girls for 4 years, and initially they said, well, you know what, we'll take her oldest son also, the troublemaker. That's the one, that I would say that about
yeah.
him. He was always so ornery, but they said, we'll take him also. And it wasn't very long before he ended up getting in trouble at school or something, and they threw him to residential, and he was bounced around and cross diagnosed, misdiagnosed, over medicated. I mean, made to feel like nobody
Oh,
cared, because I'm in this battle for these babies, trying to fight. And I mean, eventually they just had this like no contact. I mean, would write things in paperwork, like mothers having inappropriate conversations with the juvenile when she could, just
they
nonsense.
pull that all the time.
Yeah, I cannot even stress to you enough the torture that I endured, myself and the father. I haven't mentioned the father. He was around, African American guy. He was older than I, older than myself,
Mhm.
but always involved as he could be with the girls. We never lived together. We were never married. So what? He wasn't abusive to me or, anything. It was just kind of like we co-parented, and that was that. That was our
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
But he was really just excluded out of the whole thing and made to be like this womanizing drug dealer, kind of very racially profiled. It was terrible,
So that
terrible,
was a racist thing.
very much so. And he struggles with literacy, his literacy. I mean, he's I hate to say it, but I mean, he's pretty much illiterate.
Hmm.
He was a semi-pro boxer in his younger day, and now mostly primarily mechanic. But um, I mean, and he's what, 60 something now. I mean, not terribly old, but anyway, the man has managed to get through life pretty well,
Hmm.
with having that disability. I don't know if it was boxing related or whatever, but um, he really just kind of never had a leg to stand on when it came to the kids. I mean, he if you read over the paperwork, it is just outrageous the way that they characterize this man. The
Hmm.
children have no bond to the father. The father has only attended visits only with the mother, and can only care for the children if the mother is around. That's not true.
Mm-mm.
That man he could change a diaper, with his a blindfold on. I mean,
Hmm.
he was a great dad. Oops, sorry about
So
that.
they didn't even give him a chance
No, no,
for, I mean, the kinship care should have gone to him.
absolutely. And that is where they got me. Now, this is how it came around full circle with the how I knew that first treatment place was a setup. Now, just see if you can follow me here. When I initially went to that second treatment center, the local one, I was a couple of weeks in, very vulnerable, very much in mourning and mourning the loss of
Mhm.
my little boy that was in Arizona, and of course the babies. And I just was, I can only imagine kind of what my state of mind was, because I don't particularly remember when I was pulled out and told that my attorney was on the phone.
Mhm.
I had a phone call and I took the call, and I just remember the nature of the conversation was something like, "Hey, we had court today. You weren't there. It's okay. Everybody knows you're in treatment. That's fine. But here's the thing: um, if you don't contest those allegations that Turning Point Recovery Center is making about you, um, they'll drop whatever they have on the father." I'm thinking to myself, what the? I didn't even think about what they have on the father. I'm knowing, well, the father doesn't have the kids.
Mhm.
And what he meant by allegations was the little things that they were saying, like that I was, not uh, didn't put the fitted sheet on the bed, or that I was delayed response when spoken to. That basically didn't bathe the kids, had more drugs on my person than what I turned in. Okay, so at the time it just sounded like very like, you know, these are just like hearsay,
Mhm.
whatever. For my attorney to suggest to me that if I don't contest these allegations, that they'll drop what they have on the father. It didn't even dawn on me to say, like, what do they have on the father?
Uh-huh.
Because I was just kind of like so used to them just being, slandering him. I mean, there was like one incident between him and my oldest son that was investigated, and it was deemed no abuse occurred, case closed. Well, they held on to that
Oh,
one little thing, and I mean, from the rest of the duration of the case, it was always like the father has been known to be abusive to the juvenile's older sibling, da 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 da, But anyhow, with that being said, I thought to myself, well, yeah, I won't contest it, whatever. It's not like they're criminal charges. You know what I'm saying? These are just these women, these hateful women that were saying lies about me. So fine, I won't contest it. End of discussion. Do you know, 5 years later, when it finally came time for what was supposed to have been a termination of parental rights, um, I don't want to say hearing, but trial, um, when I walked in the courthouse, I'm looking around. I'm like, where's my therapist? I thought she was subpoenaed. And my attorney at the time goes, isn't that her? And I look over, and lo and behold, it was the director of that rehab center that they had sent me to 5 years ago and gotten me to not contest to the allegations that woman was making. I'll never forget that woman, because she had me in her office and was just being just as nasty, mean to me as she could be. Allegations that I threw a phone at her, and I think if I would have thrown a phone, I probably would have been arrested. But all of a
right.
sudden, these like petty little things were very serious, and in a termination of parental rights court trial, all of a sudden, these are like very serious things. Like, I had more drugs on my person. I threw a phone at all of these things that I admitted to. And it's like, oh my God, they were going to do this the whole time. Like this has been years ago. And to see that woman was their key witness, does that make sense to you?
Mhm. It's all pre-planned.
It was all pre-planned, every bit of it, to send me to that treatment center. And then when I read in the paperwork that if Miss Lake tested positive in the morning, we were going to discharge her. It's like I couldn't win for losing. I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? How could you do that to someone? And
Well,
so it drove me to leave. And when I left, then they came and took the kids, and it's just crazy. So, um, I'm sorry, did you have something to say?
it's all about the money. I wonder
Most
how
of the time,
much you're
yes, I feel like it is. But in this case, it was about the power. She
right.
didn't need money. She didn't need anybody's money. You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
She wanted my girls. She hand selected those beautiful biracial little girls that
mhm.
she could go gallivant around and parade around church and town. She was a public figure. Oh, these poor, you know, Black children, their drug addicted mother, it just looked like they were these sanctified people.
But they get money for those kids as well. So isn't she double dipping in
She
some
doesn't need
manner?
the money. I mean, yeah, I would say she's probably getting a check.
Yeah,
I
yeah, she
get,
is.
well, they're adopted. I
And she
mean,
got more money for that too with
is
the
that even legal to be the director of the agency? And I mean, none of it is, because let me tell you, over the course of those years, I became very familiar with the state, you know, social services employee handbook and manual on adopt employees fostering or let alone adopting children in custody. And I mean, every rule was broken. It just, everybody turned a blind eye. And believe it or not, when I was working with that reporter, um, I mean, we must have worked on that, together 6, 7 months or so. I don't know, give or take. And I can remember referencing that manual. And at the time, I would go and I look up rules and regulations on employees adopting or fostering children, and it would say this portion of the manual is under construction. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Are they rewriting this to accommodate what she's doing? And I've never gotten a straight answer, but I think so. And
hmm
at this point, this is now a agency issue. I mean, this is not just it gets so much worse, and it takes a turn. I mean, when I tell you the story. So yes, as soon as what was it, the law that Bill Clinton passed in when he was president about the children, if kids come into care, they're
1997
nine,
ASFA
there you
or
go.
AFSA. Sorry.
Yes. The time frame is like what, 13 months, 14 months, something like
Adopt
that.
them out quicker.
Yes. And it's like the kids need to find their forever home.
Mhm.
So that's where we were. I mean, and I have emails and emails and emails of, back when that was happening, it was, let's see, the kids were taken in April. Um, they turned a year old May 1st, May, June, July, August, September, October. And I will say I had a couple of dirty UAs right out of rehab. I did. I came home and I felt like I didn't know what to do with myself. My
Mhm.
kids, all I had was like this shell of a home with
Mhm.
these like baby clothes everywhere, and I did not know how to deal. So I did struggle. I had, a couple of slip ups with relapse, and then
Well,
I
who
got
wouldn't?
focused. Well, I mean, society doesn't accept that. That's not a
Well, they destroy
acceptable.
your life and take your kids. I mean,
Tell that to someone. I mean,
ugh.
I feel like as long as I am truthful and I am honest and real, and I mean, hey, if you don't like me because of that, I'm sorry. That's unfortunate, but that's what happened. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't know what to do. And I do come from a family history of, I mean, my brother did pass away of an overdose, and unfortunately, that was something that was devastating for our family. And needless to say, that's what happened. But I pulled myself together, and nothing would happen. No progress was made. It wouldn't matter what I did, it wasn't going to satisfy them. And not to mention, just like when I had to go to their home, for visits and stuff. I mean, it's maybe a couple times of that. And I felt as though they made it their business to make me feel as uncomfortable and excluded as possible, made me feel as though my children were just a nuisance. They told me out of their mouth, we have no desire to adopt these kids. It was almost like, why can't you get your crap together and get these kids back? Their
Mm.
toys were everywhere, all over the house. House is a mess. And they made me feel like super guilty and just like, and it was just a miserable feeling. And so I said, I would rather have my visits behind a one-way mirror at the Division of Family Services office in a
Mhm.
little 8 by 8 room with the dirty little toys. I would rather have that than go sit in their home and feel that way, you know?
So they were putting on an act.
I mean, yeah. Jennifer was never particularly nice ever. I was always more comfortable dealing with her husband because he's just like does anything his wife tells him to do. He's real one of those, but the whole family's that way. But
Ugh.
um yeah, it what was your original what was your original question? What did you just say?
Well, I was going to say, all of this was an act.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so they should get an Oscar for pulling that off.
Oh yeah. I mean it was intentional. Every bit of discomfort that I felt was absolutely intentional,
Hmm.
inflicted on me, with intent. So, um, yeah. So I guess let me get up to speed here. As soon as the time came where the kids were able to, are we going to go home or are we going to, find we got to find their forever home? I got notice via text message from the caseworker that said, you missed court. That I had no, I should have been more on the ball, I guess, back then. But, I was a rookie. I was still
Well,
getting my
yeah.
foot in this. And I guess I wasn't hip to like checking case net. I thought maybe a lawyer might call me or something.
Hmm.
For whatever reason. Could have just been I was really depressed.
Hmm.
I missed court and they said the permanency plan has changed from reunification to adoption. Um, and that was that. Um, and it was just, I mean, horrible, horrific. It just, the dad and I used to go visit the girls at their daycare. We were able to go to the daycare and primarily their dad because it was kind of like inner city, kind of like where he's from, his kind
Hmm.
of stomping grounds. He knew a lot of the daycare workers. He was comfortable going there to see the girls. The very next day, we were met at the doors of the daycare. You can't come in. You can't come see your kids, and it's just
Ah,
like, anyway,
wow.
that went on, and then they drugged us out for like 4 years. Four
Hmm.
years, we played house with these babies, with these girls, once a week, if we were lucky, with the exception of COVID, in a public environment, supervised visitation. Um, I can't tell you how many times we went to the mall, into the bounce house and the park and the swimming and this and that and this and over and over and over and over. And that's great. We're grateful, but um there's something very, I think, it's a strategy to humiliate you,
Hmm.
to put you in an uncomfortable position as a parent, to not really be able to parent your kid because you're not
Hmm.
really able to parent them any other time except for 2 hours a week or every other week if you're lucky, with someone with a clipboard writing that
Oh,
like
brother. Yeah,
lecture
it's very
hurt
sinister.
them.
Right,
I mean, that's trauma.
right. So at this trial for the parental rights, and you saw these people there, how long did that last?
Okay, so we have to move forward to get there. So what happened was,
Okay.
how are we doing on time?
We're doing fine.
Okay. Um, about the time that the article dropped, that news article,
Hmm.
I was like at the depths of my despair. I just felt like I don't know what my purpose is anymore. I wasn't working. Um, I didn't fit in. I just felt like what do you say? Oh, do you have kids? Yes, I actually have twins. Oh, I couldn't deal with it. It was too much. And
Yeah.
so, I thought maybe the birth of another child would
Mhm.
allow me to have some purpose again. And because all I ever wanted to be was a mom.
Yeah.
I mean, you could ask my family from the time I was a little bitty girl. Like I just loved babies and I wanted to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got myself real healthy and just prepared, and I went off birth control. And my mother killed me for saying that on a public thing one day. She's like, I can't believe you told people you did it intentionally.
Oh,
I'm like, well, I had that right. But lo and behold, I got pregnant with another set of twin girls.
oh, wow.
It was very much a surprise and very much miraculous. I mean, twins don't run in my family. I believe with every bone in my body that God said, pick yourself up. You are fit, and I mean, I can't explain it any other way. No fertility drug, nothing. Two more baby girls. So that was wonderful. And I did everything in my power to ensure that those babies were going to be coming home with me from the hospital. And I moved myself out of my home. I still had the home, but I temporarily moved out, and I moved into a sober living environment, like a house, so that I could have accountability, advocacy, support. If there was ever any questions that came up about, well, what was mom doing, during the pregnancy? What was mom doing? Because again, they weren't really keeping tabs on me anymore. They didn't care
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing. They just were waiting to, I don't know what they were dragging this out so long for, to terminate rights. Um, but yeah, I did everything I could possibly do to ensure, a safe homecoming of those babies. And by October of 2020, I gave birth to two of the most perfect little girls. Scheduled C-section, went in there, and I was home from the hospital in like 24 hours. I'm not kidding.
Wow.
Not a jaundice, not a nothing. They never left. It was almost like they were like just heaven sent. I've never seen anything like it. Usually twins at least would have to have a little son.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to go to NICU, or somebody's got to perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew. I sat him up in my hospital bed and I thanked God out loud. Oh my God, thank you so much. And I brought him home, and everything was wonderful. And their big sisters came over and they met them, and we have the videos, and it was so sweet. And at the time, now we finally had a caseworker that was actually, we had a good relationship with her. I have an audio tape about a month before I gave birth to those girls, and the audio tape. I don't know if you're familiar with the term FST, family support team meetings.
Okay.
Anytime you have an open case, they are supposed to have family support team meetings that involve everyone involved in the case. Usually, mom, dad, GALs, JOs, CASA workers, the whole nine. Whole big. I had quite a group of people involved in my FST, and I remember on this particular one, I was very pregnant, and I was kind of giving an update, and I sounded kind of meek, and then here comes my caseworker, and she's like, well, I'll speak up. And she just launches into like advocating for me, like nothing I'd ever heard before. I was certainly out of a caseworker, but I was just like, wow, thank you, but she was just like, Jessie's doing great. She's been a peer, in the sober living house. She's done another, drug test. She's clean. Everything's good. And everything just looked really good. And then I finally got my chance to speak again after she had advocated for me, and the confidence and like just the sweetness in my voice, you could just hear that I was just so excited and ready to have these babies. And I think it scared everyone. I think it scared the director. I think it scared her husband. I think that they felt like, oh my God, how are we going to lawfully terminate these rights? Because I was so confident. I thought, they're going to have to keep these girls back. Here I am with these brand new healthy babies. What grounds can you keep them from us any longer? But it was about, okay, so that was about a month before I delivered. I delivered the babies, brought them home. A month later is when myself and the father were approached, were propositioned by our attorneys, and they came to us and said that the JO would like you all to consent to hair follicle testing and contingent upon the results, they may reconsider the plan on the big girls. Now they're 5 now, almost 5. And so we had nothing to fear. I mean, I was, postpartum and let me just say this, the father, no history of substance use whatsoever. He may be a lot of things, but a drug user is not one. You couldn't pay me enough money to believe that man would have taken any sort of drug. Nothing, just not a chance. So of course we agreed. And that was very naive and stupid of me to do, because the day before Thanksgiving, it was a couple days after we did the hair test, we had a knock at the door from the caseworker, that same very caseworker that had advocated for me so tough. She and her supervisor and a couple of police officers and the on-call JO were there with an order for protective custody to remove my 1-month-old, 5.5-pound breastfed baby girls, with the allegations that we both tested positive for illegal substance on our hair tests. So here we go again. I mean, that was, as bad as you can imagine. It was terrible. And so they took the babies, and basically I'm going to try to kind of summarize this in the best way that I can, what happened. So obviously the babies have to go somewhere. They have to be placed with someone. They were taking them away. And people always say, well, if they came to my house and tried to take, I would have. And I'm like, you don't know what you would have done.
Right.
What you would have done, you probably would have done what I did. You would have been devastated and hysterical, but you would have had to hand over your children. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, the cops there too.
Yeah, I know this now, that the cops are actually there, like, for their protection, I think. And something else, those cops, they never said a word. Through all my hysteria, and I think they believed me. When I was like, what? This is not true. This is not, God. What are you doing? I was just hysterical. My son was here, my oldest, who'd been thrown to residential. Well, and this is a very important part of it. By this time, he had gone from the director's home, very quickly booted out of there, to residential, spent like 2.5 years in residential, did not do well, was put in multiple holds, and just really, really bad experience. And from there, pulled from there and placed with a woman in St. Louis, African-American woman who was very good with kind of inner city, troubled teens, troubled youth. And she did kind of steer him straight, in a sense. And we were grateful for her. And obviously, if the permanency plan changed for the babies to adoption, where did that leave him? He was going to be put up for adoption. And the Tidballs made it very clear very early on that they had no interest in adopting brother. This is the head of the state. Like, that's supposed to stand for keeping families together, but no, they didn't want brother. So when he was finally placed with the woman in St. Louis, she was kind enough to say, hey, this is crazy. This boy has a mama and a grandmama that loves him. He's got Jordan tennis shoes on his feet. I know foster kids when I see foster kids, and I know, this boy has a family. This is crazy. So she said, I will take guardianship over him to save him from being pushed into, adoption of, who's going to adopt a 14-year-old behaviorally kind of challenged kiddo. It's tough. So we were very grateful for her. Did you have a question?
No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So when they came and removed those babies that morning, it made sense to reach out to her and say, hey, And actually, I think it was my son that was like, I'm going to call her. And he was like begging her to please take my sisters. Will you take my sisters? And so it ended up, that's where the babies went. And immediately from the jump, she cut corners for me. And I mean, next day she handed them back to me. I was in St. Louis in a hotel room, with my babies. And for that, I'm very grateful. Because she provided a way for me to parent. And that's where they remained, was with her. And we did new drug tests. The drug tests were negative. The courts didn't care. They still adjudicated the babies. It was just this, nightmare. Christmas came. Luckily, I was able to go and get a hotel room, the money spent out to go spend, because that's 2 hours away. I was 2 hours away. We lived 2 hours away from my babies. And mind you, still, there's been no TPR hearing, no termination hearing on these older girls yet, because this was all done very strategically. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
They wanted to make sure that they had mom and dad both deemed unfit. Both of them, have tested positive on these drug tests, and the newborns are in foster care. And now we can hold a termination of parental rights hearing on these older girls, and boom, she gets what she wants. So that's basically kind of how it went. I'm trying to think. There were some discrepancies with the drug test that was kind of, but I won't get off into that too much because nobody really it's like they knew there was something kind of off, but it wasn't ever really addressed in court. And I was too uneducated, with law to really know, as we were doing WebEx and Zoom, I do know that somebody knew those test results weren't right. Whoever was the expert witness, the expert testimony, he was the custodian of records of Quest Laboratory, that he did not even know like how to check his own email. I mean, it was just a crop, like very bizarre, but we'll let that be. Finally, they hold this hearing that's supposed to be a termination of parental rights trial. There was no trial preparation. And I have audio recording between myself and my attorney at the time. And I'm going like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, yes, I want to take it to trial. I want to take it to trial, and him just like not saying anything for a whole 12-minute conversation, like it was just
because he was in on it.
He
was in on it.
Oh yeah. Yes. And the two attorneys that represented us, by this time I had decided we're not putting any more money into legal for me, because this judge does not want to see me with these kids. My mother had already hired an attorney at one point, tried to intervene as guardian.
Right.
What is it? What's the proper term? To intervene, motion as guardian. Yeah. I mean,
right. And kinship. She should have got the kids.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the order of, who these kids should have gone to, my mom. She even moved into a new home with a fenced-in yard, with a swing set in the back, with a third bedroom that we had decked out for those girls. I mean, we just knew they were coming home. They were coming home. They were coming. Denied. No reason given. We appealed it. Went to the 9th Western District Court of Appeals. Denied. No, it was just, we weren't even notified when the hearing was. I mean, that was like the biggest waste of $8,000 I think my mom spent down the drain. I mean, that attorney did nothing. And so, yeah, my mom didn't get them. I'd like it. Sometime I would like to know, what is that? Why? Why didn't you give them to my mother? Anyhow, the trial. Yes. So no trial preparation. And so I had a public defender at the time. And because I said, you know what, we will put the money into dad's attorney and grandma's attorney. So we were putting the money there. Um, I wanted to add a little fun fact. After they told me that they were terminating my rights, the months leading up to that, there was an FST meeting called, and they said, "Oh, Jessie's doing so good. She's doing so good." Or I'm sorry. Prior to them notifying me that the permanency plan had changed to adoption, that they were going to be terminating my rights, they were like, "Oh, everything was looking good." And the caseworker stood up. She said, "I'll be comfortable with unsupervised visitation as soon as another hair test is done." I said, "Okay." So I waited and I waited and I waited, and the hair test was never called. It was never called. And that was October, November, December, no hair test. January, no hair test. February, I got notice that they were terminating my rights. Do you know that after they did that to me, then they waited 3 weeks and they said, "Now go take your hair test." And just hoping, I think that here I had been working on my everything. I was ready to pass that hair test. I was ready. I was fighting. And for them to do that, I thought was so crappy. And
Oh,
I remember my attorney at the time, he's like, "Well, can you pass it?" And I'm like, "I think so." And he's like, "Just don't even worry about it. The kids are not in your care. They're telling them that they're terminating your rights." And so do you know that that judge issued a writ of body attachment for me for not going and doing the hair test? And that was my attorney's advice. I mean, I was advised by my attorney, don't go do it. It doesn't make any sense. And he wrote a letter or something. But do you know what a writ of body attachment is? It's
no.
equivalent to a warrant for your arrest. So in a family court matter, after you tell me that you're going to terminate my parental rights to my 3 young children, after I've been waiting to do this hair test, and then you tell me 3 weeks later in hopes that maybe I've fallen off the sober wagon or something and relapsed or done something, then you tell me to go take this hair test. And when I don't do it, I had to go turn myself into the county jail and post bond, $100 per child, get fingerprinted and mugshot taken.
Oh my God.
Is that not like,
That's even a waste of taxpayer dollars.
I
Oh,
don't even know
hello,
how
Doge.
it was for humiliation, I
Yeah.
think. I guess. I don't know. But that gives you an idea of why I was like, no more money for my legal representation. I'm going to go ahead
Mhm.
and stick with my public defender, you know? And
Yeah.
I felt like we had decent rapport. I really was feeling him out all the time. Every
Mhm.
conversation I was like, "Are you with me? Are you?" And I
Oh
felt like
God.
he saw the corruption that was happening. And so I went with it. But, um, the other attorney that was representing the father was a friend of mine, kind of, and you know, he too was very aware of what happened. And interesting, he ended up killing himself a few
Mm.
months after all of this took place. But I don't know why. I don't know if the guilt or whatever of him. I'm sure he had a lot of guilt being an attorney on some of the things that he'd done throughout his life. But um,
Wow. So the attorney
the
the
paid attorney,
hmm
yeah, that
and he unalived himself.
yeah,
Well, God deals with these people.
yeah, it just stinks that he was like a friend of mine. And
Mm.
I still to this day, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around the fact that like he did that to me, that he sat
Right.
there and said, "Well, I haven't even told you." So we go in for the termination of parental rights trial. And it was the most bizarre experience. It was myself and the father, and we're just kind of walking around the courthouse aimlessly, like, where do we go? Where do we go? And it was like there was no direction. And then next thing you know, we were pulled into one of those little consultation rooms in the courthouse and basically told, "You have two choices. We've And they made it like well, you're lucky here. We've gotten them on board here. You got two choices. you either do a voluntary termination of your own parental rights to the older girls, now age 5, who have been fostered by the director and her husband for the last 4 years, so they were comfortable there. But you do a voluntary termination of your own parental rights. And if you do that, we will grant you, hopefully, we're working on it. I'm thinking we're getting them there, that they'll grant you a guardianship on the babies.
Oh.
So you sign the babies into a guardianship, and guardianships can be reversed, can be well, it was told to me like temporary guardianship, it can be reversed. So you don't lose rights to your infants, but of course you do to the older girls. Now the other option is if you decide to fight this and you take this to trial and you lose all 4 girls. We'll put them all up for adoption.
Oh.
You have 1 hour to decide.
And this is another no-win, set up to fail.
You have 1 hour to decide. I'm like, you have literally just forged drug test results. Because that's the bottom line. We did not test positive for illegal substance, legitly. You know what I'm saying? Like, these results, and I knew it. It was just my word against theirs. I was so traumatized. I couldn't analyze the paper. I'm like, I don't understand. A medical review officer called me out of New York, and there was 3 different signatures on 2 different. I mean, it was just, I wasn't an expert, and I was a traumatized mother that just wanted my babies. That's all I could think of, is I just want my babies. And the thought of losing all 4 of those girls, and I couldn't. So I signed my rights over to the bigger girls, because I'm like, I can't lose them all. I just can't. I have to save the babies.
They ganged up on you.
Oh, under duress, threat, coercion. I mean, pressure, everything. I mean, it was an eye for an eye. It was biblical. It is something that it's unbelievable. It's like a Lifetime movie, so, yeah, I mean, an eye for an eye. It was horrible. But and then you have 1 hour to decide. They had already had a post-adoption agreement drafted that my attorney drafted with their attorney, that I had no part of, that they had it all done, and nobody took the time to sit and I don't want to say translate, but what's the word I'm looking for? To
translate it to help
translate it, or to interpret this contract with this legal jargon, that I'm trying to read over. Obviously the father's not going to read it. He's relying on me. He doesn't read well at all. He's just like, he's so old school. When I think of him throughout this whole thing, all I can picture is him going
oh,
what? He's like from the old school, like, they don't do this. They don't come and take your kids. And, he just didn't understand any part of it. He was just like blown away, bless his heart. I feel just terrible for us both. And when I look at this from the outside looking in, I feel so sorry for us both, just what a horrible, horrible situation. So thank God we had Miss A, we'll call her Miss A, the guardian that had adopted or had taken guardianship over my son, because she made it very clear to me, I will take guardianship and I will give them back to you. You moved to St. Louis. She had some rental property and a rental home. She was property manager. She said, I'll rent this home to you, and you move here, and I will give the girls back to you. And that's that. And she would collect the money. I would raise the kids. Hey, sounds good. I had no issue with the money. I mean, that wasn't a problem for me, but for her, looking back on it, this was a business for her, Um, and a pretty good business opportunity, if you ask me. I mean, she gets the money, I raise the kids. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can see why she did it. This woman had very controlling tendencies, but long story short, I moved to St. Louis and her and I kind of shared the girls for the first couple of years, and they appeased me with this whole, I didn't fight those drug tests because it was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've got access to my girls. The other ones were adopted and life, I was healing and moving on. And then something changed. And
Mm.
the father and I kind of hit a rocky uh, period. And she doesn't want to give him back, basically.
Oh.
Uh, and without trying to get too like Jerry Springer, and and that's one thing that I hate about so many of these cases is that so often you see us, there's always like some little bit of drama, like, oh well, the dad came in, I tried to fight my other guy I've been seeing, and yes, there may be a little bit of that. But I don't, that does not take away from the fact that none of this constitutes severing parent child relationships. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just, anyhow, yeah, and I feel like somewhere along the way that this woman, Miss A, got like a better offer of some sort. And I can't help but think about the director, like it's just all been this kind of big mystery. But where I'm at now is um, she basically just like stopped letting my daughters come home and evicted me, even though she got all of her money and some, made me file for rental assistance when I did not need rental assistance, and pocketed the money. I mean, this woman
Oh.
got literally
More
my
more double
car,
dipping.
huh?
More double dipping.
Oh yeah, she's a master system. I mean, system. I don't want to
Yeah,
say
player.
manipulative, whatever. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I mean, initially I sold my car to hire a lawyer,
Mm.
and I was evicted. I lost my house, lost my car. I had no choice but to move out of St. Louis and move 2 hours back to home to my mother. I had to take an FMLA leave from work because I was so distraught about not
Mm-hmm.
knowing if these girls, when I would see them again. Not to mention,
Oh.
dad was, it's amazing that him and I were like so strong through all of this. And then we get through it. And it was like the minute that I decided, like, maybe I kind of was outgrowing that relationship, like, he just did not handle it well.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that being said, that's a family business. That's family stuff. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? We went through that. I handled things. I got an order of protection, and he violated it, and he's paid consequences, and that's that. But, to this day, our family is forced to be divided. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tell you how it ended up. I moved back home to my mother's house. Ended up, I guess I was able to keep my job through. Then I went on short-term disability and was actually drawing a check for a short time for the mental
Mm-hmm.
anguish of the separation of my children. And here's the kicker. I went and I checked myself into treatment shortly after I moved back to Columbia, because I knew that I was filing this petition to terminate guardianship. And I thought, I want to make sure that I am
Mm-hmm.
up to par in every way, shape, or form. I was hurting. It was like living this all over again. I'm saying, like, how this happens once, twice, but my God, how could someone else want to keep my children
Sick people.
from me? I mean, not to mention like my mom. I mean, she's like one of the best people to walk the earth. I mean, she is the true definition of like a mother who has sacrificed her life for us. You know, she went without a new coat for 12 years or something, you know, to get us what we lived in, not a nice neighborhood. You know, we had drove crappy cars, but she made sure we had nice things. She was a nurse. She was the absolute backbone of our family. And all I can think of is like, you know, when is she going to catch a break? Her whole retirement is gone. It's gone because of this. So yeah, I sold my car to hire a lawyer. That lawyer was not for me, and I ended up hiring another attorney who has extorted me out of close to $40,000 over this last year, and has done absolutely nothing for me with this litigation. It's just, I mean, I did the therapeutic reunification therapy, supervised visitation. I pay $60 an hour to a supervisor for 3 hours every other weekend to come supervise me in a public setting, be with my now 4-year-old twin daughters, that were addressing me as Jessie, and I'm not allowed to correct them. If I correct them, it was noted, and I was definitely scolded and, you know, told, do not correct them if they call you by your first name. I mean, I'm not allowed to explain anything. I was with them yesterday. We had our last supervised visit because I have successfully completed phase 2 of my custody visitation order. So the petition to terminate guardianship was not granted. And you know why? The majority of it, reason why it was not granted is because I checked myself into treatment a year ago off the radar. And so that means that I technically had to have engaged in some sort of use of some sort if I went and got treatment. So no one told me to do that. You know, I was a mother that just was wanting to be the best I could be, to, you know what I'm saying? No one was telling me to do this. I did this on my own, you know, and that's ultimately what prevented the judge from giving me my daughters back. And she said, well, the final ruling was a visitation order, and it is a ridiculous 6-phase, 9-month long, never ending financial drain, you know, hair testing every 90 days at my expense, which I just did. I just finished that up. It was all negative. I don't see an end.
No, because they know they can suck more money out of you. It's extortion.
Well, I don't think either one of us even have an attorney anymore. That lawyer of mine was so abusive. I mean, gaslighting me. He did nothing but take my mother's retirement. My poor mother. I mean, we are living, you know, check to check. I mean, I will say I got my son the day that we found out that she was going to contest me to terminate the guardianship, like she was not going to consent. It was my 40th birthday, and he was just a couple of weeks of being away from being 18 in his senior year of high school, living in her home. And he called me. He's like, "Mom, come and get me." And I did that day. I couldn't make him sleep under her roof not another day. And she did outlandish stuff, reported him missing, his birthday, reported his birthday to be him being a year younger. So to show that he was 16, not 17.
Oh, that's fraud.
For knocking at my door. Like I had this, it was just, you know, and I hate to say it like that I'm such a big, but I am a victim.
Oh, yes.
You know, like you people are the people that wake up and tell these lies. And like, I told my mom, I don't think I ever in my life have I ever woken up and said to myself, like, I am going to inflict as much pain or any pain on any other human being's life, you know, in the way that some of these people that I have encountered throughout this whole process.
I don't think they're human. That's my opinion.
I don't know, but I certainly hope and pray that one day they I don't wish hurt on them. It wouldn't make me feel better to see them tortured or anything like that. I do want justice. You know, I want justice. So I forgot a very key point. When I filed the petition to terminate the guardianship, how are we doing on time?
Well, we're getting there.
Okay. I'm wrapping it up. The very first motion that was filed on the guardian's behalf was for me to undergo a 15-panel hair test. And so obviously that's something that, you know, it's kind of, I'm like, oh, you know, knowing what happened with that, with the hair test that, you know, got the babies removed initially. But with that being said, I was ordered I had like a select group of laboratories that I could choose from, you know, to get the drug testing done. I was very apprehensive, but I called and I said, hey, you know, this is me. This is what I'm trying to do. It's very important that you handle this test with care because I've had a very poor experience. And the gentleman on the phone happened to be the business lab manager of the laboratory that their logo is printed on the results that were used to remove my daughters 4 years ago. And I mentioned that to him and he's like, really? You know, and I said, I mean, I can show you these results. And he said, bring those with you. And by this time, I've had a lot of time to analyze these papers. And I've kind of gotten things figured out here on these papers where I can see with the naked eye, this ain't right, this ain't right, this ain't right. And they all have stamped JO exhibit number, blah, 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 JO exhibit. So these were results that they were going to use against me if there was ever a trial to be used. You know what I mean? So they're the real deal. Anyhow, I come to the laboratory to do the test and I left the gentleman with the copies of the results and I followed up a couple of weeks later and I have it all on audio and now I have a written testimony that he absolutely confirmed that those results are forged. They were altered, cutoff levels changed. The metric displayed on it displays a liquid metric on a hair test. We do not measure hair in milliliters. We are talking about forgery of court documents in a court proceeding by a public official in order to steal kids.
That's fraud upon the court.
But
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but
I mean, people are like, well, how do you, you know, how can you prove? Well, it's not that hard. Who had the motive? You know what I'm saying? Who had the motive? And we've got the results from the laboratory here that are all consistent with what I guess the results reflected environmental exposure, which let a professional say that it should have been thrown out. It means that no one ingested anything on their own or by any fault of their own, and it should have been thrown out, but it was never even entertained. And get this, I found this out, obviously, after I filed the petition to terminate guardianship. I have a lawyer. I call my lawyer. Guess what? He didn't introduce it into evidence in my trial. He held it.
so he withheld evidence.
Yeah. Why would you not introduce that? Why would you not want the judge to know that the very reason why these girls were taken from me was based off of forged drug tests? And I have the test. The gentleman said, I will testify for you with or without a subpoena. I mean, at one point it was like, well, I can't issue a subpoena until you pay this balance. You know, your balance is back up to 17,000. Well, I know. It's like, look, I just paid you 10,000. Well, we need another 7,000. I mean, I'm tapped. I have nothing left. I have nothing. And my jobs, I can't even keep a job because I'm the crazy that cannot stop obsessing.
Well, it's from the trauma
about my children and the wrong that has been done to me. It's unbelievable. And my family, you know, I don't want to end this in tears, but it's like that son of mine the one that's 19, almost 19 now, he's angry.
Hmm.
He's an angry kid. I mean, and a lot of it comes out to me, because I mean, he's so tired of seeing me lose, you know.
Oh,
It's just not right. But yeah, so thank you for letting me come on. I know I'm probably at the cutoff time.
well, so you're just you're going to go back to court and try?
Right now, I'm just doing the visitation order. Like I said, I just passed the 90-day hair test again. This is like 4 hair tests that I've done throughout this whole litigation. They've all been negative. I've done everything. And I told my visit supervisor lady that I was really blessed to have a good, I mean, everyone I've interacted with throughout this whole thing, this litigation over these girls, I've had a positive interaction with. I mean, the lady from the Lutheran services that did the home study, she calls and checks on me. I have a parent aide that I sought out. I'm trying to do anything I can, and I can't get my kids back. You know,
It's all
I'm
about the
just going to
money.
follow this order.
Hmm.
And now I don't have anyone to really back. I mean, like, I guess my plan is officially terminate that relationship with the attorney, let him know, hey, and this relationship's over. Notify the courts that I will be pro se, file to be as poor person, and I will start filing my own drug test results and just trying to communicate to the courts pro se on my own that I am in compliance with the custody order. But here's the thing, at the end of the custody order, it never says that I get my girls back. It just makes it so difficult and
Hmm.
like ridiculous that they hope that I get so mad and frustrated that I just give up.
Oh, I would be a thorn in their side.
I'm trying. I am really trying. And one more very interesting thing. Recently, the Guardian reached out to me and tells me that my oldest daughters are very concerned about why are the little ones seeing our mom? Where is our mom? One of them even thought that I was dead. I'm like, well, that's because no one has done anything, to try to not. I mean, someone has led her to believe that. So all of a sudden, they invite me to this dance recital a couple of weeks ago, and I got to go see the older girls. And they are phenomenal dancers, and they are super interested in mom. Where's our mom? And I'm like, I mean, I hate to say it, I never thought there was at one point in time I never could even imagine having this train of thought or this frame of mind that what, they're gonna come back
Hmm.
one day. And I hope it's sooner than later. I've been robbed out of so much of them.
Oh, yes.
All of
Yeah,
my mother,
I hope those girls just keep harping on where's mom to the point where it drives the Guardian crazy.
all I know is one day I hope that we can sit down when they're all older, and if nothing else, it's documented. Those girls are going to have to understand. They'll know. The truth will come out,
Hmm.
and those people are going to have some explaining to do. Um,
I was just thinking, why don't you take all that information and send it to Doge? People are sending them their cases.
what do you mean, Doge? Sorry, I'm like a
Oh,
lame brain.
the, the
Department of.
yeah, Department of Government Efficiency,
Okay.
because they're going through all this corruption. They're looking through all this corruption. I think they would like to see this.
I have written just about everybody under the sun. I mean, I have OIG. I actually got a response back, and it was all about everything they've redacted and da, 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 da. We're not going to put this. We're taking this out. We're doing this. We're going to forward. You know, um, yeah. I just wish I could find an attorney that would look at this and see it. Hey, how about the California right to lie case? That mother, are you familiar? The mother and daughter that, I mean, those caseworkers got up there. It's like a public official or a person in that um, position, lying under oath in a court proceeding
Hmm.
is not okay. And in this case, for your own personal gain to adopt these kids, you did the.
Mm-mm.
Anyhow, so it was wonderful to see the girls, all of them. It was a very, very expensive weekend, but it was worth it, well worth it. And we followed up with a FaceTime call, and that was great. And they were just like little spitting images of me. They're like, look at our serum, and this is our glow mist and our
Oh,
cosmetic table. I'm like, oh my God, these are my daughters.
yes. Yes.
So that was really good. But
Well, if keep up the communication with them and just keep going.
now I had a conversation with their mother after that, that I don't know that she's going to let me continue to communicate. I just told her, listen, there's some yucky stuff that's come to surface, and I don't know how you feel about this or if this comes as a surprise. And she got very, um, I didn't do anything
Standoffish.
wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. You can write what you want, but I can tell you if you're writing things about me that are false, I'll be suing and, da 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 da. And I just, said, you know what? That's unfortunate. If you think that you've done nothing wrong and you're not going to take any accountability over this, that there's no point in having this conversation. I said, but you have to take that to the grave. That you destroyed someone's life. And she said, I'm not going to have this conversation with you because I don't have to. And he hung up on me.
Oh, and she probably calls herself a Christian and goes to church and all this. No.
She can call herself what she wants, but I hope that we have another article soon that sheds some light on,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
what was.
people need to know this stuff goes on.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you spoke out.
I
So,
appreciate it. I mean,
yeah,
I really do. I know. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and I hope it made.
no. Mm-mm. But how can people reach you if they have any questions?
Through you, or I also have an email address. It is Lake Jessie 88 at Gmail.
Okay,
So
I'll put
that's,
that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's Lake, like the body of water, Lake Jessie Jessie 88 at gmail.com.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I'm so glad you spoke out and don't jump off. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms. Feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Jessie Lake. Very
Thank you.
sorry for all this, but I think you will prevail in the end.
Hope so. I hope so. Maybe I can help someone else also in
Oh, yes, that's what we do as advocates.
absolutely.